is an element found in nature in mineral forms. Cadmium has no known biologic function in humans. Principal organs affected by cadmium's toxicity, both acutely and chronically, are kidneys, bone, and lungs. The bone disease that occurs with the above-average chronic exposures is thought to be secondary to cadmium's effect on the kidneys. Kidney is the principal organ targeted by chronic exposure to cadmium. The cadmium that is absorbed accumulates in the liver and kidneys. Excretion is low and slow because cadmium remains tightly bound to metallothionein, which is almost completely reabsorbed in the renal tubules. Cadmium is known to increase oxidative stress by being a catalyst in the formation of reactive oxygen species, increasing lipid peroxidation, and depleting glutathione and protein-bound sulfhydryl groups. Cadmium causes mutations, DNA strand breaks, chromosomal damage, cell transformation, and impaired DNA repair in cultured mammalian cells. If given a high enough dose, it can lead to hemorrhagic gastroenteritis, liver and kidney necrosis, cardiomyopathy, and metabolic acidosis. Symptoms include nausea, vomiting, abdominal cramps and pain, diarrhea, and tenesmus.
Dr. Morris had taken a great interest in our project of determining whether Srila Prabhupada, the founder of the Hare Krishna movement, had been poisoned in 1977. He had one of the world's most advanced nuclear testing facilities. He did super accurate neutron activation analysis, and he had offered to do a series of tests. Neutron activation analysis, which could determine the total elemental contents in even tiny amounts of material, such as a few pieces of hair. So November 1st, 2001, Dr. Morris received the package of hair samples, and we prepared to test them for the GBC. Between 2002 and 2005, Dr. Morris did these tests. The mercury was normal in all three. The arsenic and antimony were slightly elevated, but in all three. And then, surprise, the cadmium was sky high. The cadmium turned out to be the primary poison and the arsenic only secondary. The average amount of cadmium in these three samples was 15.75 parts per million, or about 250 times more than the normal unexposed person in human society, who typically has only 0.063 parts per million. In the scientific literature, we could not find any examples of anyone who ever had these levels. They were unprecedented, even amongst those who were seriously contaminated environmentally or occupationally. The only way to acquire these kinds of levels of cadmium would be to directly ingest cadmium chemicals, or in other words, be poisoned in your food and drink. These levels are deadly and lethal over a very short period of time. Miraculously, as proven by the September and March 77 hair samples A and D, Srila Prabhupada had these levels for a minimum of 6 months, and if we count from March until November when he departed, 8 months. That's a long time. For those who did not accept Srila Prabhupada's own statements that someone has poisoned me, now you have Dr. Morris's report. Suspicious sounding whispers about poisoning in the background of tape recordings made in Srila Prabhupada's quarters during his last days. There were 3 primary whispers. Poison's going down, giggle, giggle, poison's going down. That's Tamal's voice and Bhavananda's giggle. Is there poison in the milk? This is just before you can hear on the tape recording Srila Prabhupada drinking milk. And poisoning for a long time. That's Jayapataka's voice. To which Srila Prabhupada weakly replies, to me. So now everyone was asking, why are the caretakers in Prabhupada's room whispering about poisoning him 3 days before he departed? So we decided to see if the poison whisperers could be scientifically certified. So, the poison whispers are factual, scientifically verified evidence that disciples in Srila Prabhupada's room were discussing and giggling about poisoning Srila Prabhupada. The two sound studios, Jack Mitchell, Dr. McCaffrey, J.P. French, JBR Technologies, and OWL Investigations. 7 times confirmed. The whispers can no longer be disputed. The studies speak for themselves. These tapes had not been previously widely distributed, but now it was noticed that Srila Prabhupada had said, "Someone has poisoned me" 3 times, and that Srila Prabhupada and his caretakers had extensive discussions about being maliciously poisoned.
क्या फरमा रहे हैं?
कोई बोलता है कि कोई पॉइजन है।
किसको?
मुझे
कौन बोलता है?
यही सब फ्रेंड
কি বলেছে শ্রীপ্রভু?
ये बोले
आपको कौन पॉइजन देगा, किस लिए देगा?
Who said that?
But it's curious that Srila Prabhupada chose to first reveal about his poisoning to an outsider.
ये महाराज ये कोथा आप कैसे बोला आज की कोई बोला है कि पॉइजन दिया है? या आपको कुछ आभास हुआ है क्या?
नहीं, ऐसे कोई बोला देने से क्या होता है, शायद कोई किताब में लिखा।
Sure, Prabhupada. You said before that it is said that you were poisoned.
This kind of symptoms are seen when a man is poisoned, he says. Not that I am.
Yeah. Did anyone tell you that, or you just know it from before?
I read something.
I see. That's why actually we cannot allow anyone else to cook for you.
What is it? No, I would want to.
সুপ্রভুপা, ওটা কি ব্যাপার হয়েছিল? মেন্টাল ডিস্ট্রেস?
बोलिए बोलिए।
वही बात है, कोई हमको पॉइजन किया।
यदि देखिए बात यह है कि हो सकता है किसी राक्षस ने दिया हो, किसी राक्षस ने पॉइजन। तो ये बोलते हैं तो इसमें कुछ न कुछ सत्य का है, इसमें कोई संदेह नहीं।
They said that when Srila Prabhupada is saying that there must be some truth in it.
Srila Prabhupada, Shastriji says that there must be some truth to it. He said that. So who is it that has poison?
There is Tamal's mercy-killing interview done just days after Srila Prabhupada's departure for Back to Godhead magazine with Satsarup, wherein he claims that Srila Prabhupada asked him repeatedly for medicine to die now, implying that Srila Prabhupada wanted an assisted suicide or euthanasia. This was to be Tamal's defense for poisoning Srila Prabhupada, that he was just following instructions.
A number of times he would say, "Can you give me medicine? Please give me medicine that will allow me to disappear now." Another time he said, I want most now to disappear. I want to die peacefully. Let me die peacefully. Now on one hand we could take it and give him that medicine or let him stop eating and fast until death. We could have done that. And yet it seemed that, of course, we could not do that out of our love for him.
This was when some of us came together as a loose-knit committee and decided to do our own investigation. And in May of '99, 2,000 Someone Has Poisoned Me books were sent out for free. They had printed a book called Not That I Am Poisoned, organized by a disciple of the chief suspect, Tamal, written by a disciple of Jayapataka, another suspect, and financed by Bhakti Charu Swami, another suspect. So you have the suspects investigating the matter in which they're suspected. Does this make any sense? The truth behind Srila Prabhupada's glorious passing? No, it's not the truth. This is a whitewash cover-up, cover to cover, full of lies, deceit, hypocrisy, fraud, trickery, ridicule, and word jugglery. I actually say in this book, get this, that when Srila Prabhupada was talking about someone has poisoned him, that these are the senile ramblings that you cannot take seriously, that are culturally typical of elderly Vaishnava Bengalis at the point of death. They just complain about things. Is this really how we should be thinking about Srila Prabhupada? So why does the ISKCON leadership adamantly deny Srila Prabhupada's poisoning in the face of so much scientifically certified evidence? Is it because it's true and it threatens their status quo, or that maybe there are still some poisoners in the ruling GBC elite? So this can only be a deliberate, malicious, homicidal poisoning. It just cannot be explained any other way.
That is my only request, that at the last day, don't torture me and put to death.
Those who cannot understand or accept the evidence and scientific proof that Srila Prabhupada was actually maliciously poisoned with lethal amounts of the heavy metal cadmium at levels about 250 times above the average normal person, often raise various objections to what they may call the poison theory. Of course, it is no longer a theory, but an established fact. Those who are honest and who look at the evidence will agree with this fact, while those who have compromised honesty will come up with defective objections as to why it just can't be true. The problem is not so much that people disagree with the evidence, it is much more that they do not know what it is. They most likely have not even looked at the evidence, nor read the November 77 discussions about poisoning between Srila Prabhupada and his entourage. If they did, there would be 99% less doubts and questions. All this will be found in our upcoming report on Srila Prabhupada's poisoning. So that's the biggest reason people do not accept Srila Prabhupada was poisoned homicidally. They haven't studied the evidence. A second reason why someone cannot appreciate the mountain of poisoning evidence is if they are influenced or dependent in some way upon ISKCON, its leaders, or gurus. All who strenuously deny the poisoning have covered it up and even prohibited discussion about it. The ISKCON organization strongly pressures the way its members think, and thus independent thinking is practically impossible in those conditions. A third reason may be if someone is unable to bear the emotional pain, shock, and the ramifications that Srila Prabhupada, our beloved eternal spiritual master, was actually poisoned right under our noses while we suspected nothing. There may be other reasons also, but the evidence speaks for itself. It is not a concocted theory. Srila Prabhupada's poisoning has been conclusively proven and established now by the most recent evidence of cadmium findings in several hair samples that were provided by the ISKCON GBC themselves. Altogether, the total body of evidence is massive and undeniable. Expert opinions have confirmed the lethality of these cadmium levels. This evidence is not just going to go away, and it does establish as an historical fact that Srila Prabhupada was maliciously poisoned. Still, even in the face of the hard proof of poisoning, various objections are offered, such as:
Srila Prabhupada had blood tests done in London, September 1977, which would have shown poisoning if it was true.
This is incorrect. Testimonies and interviews collected by the Truth Committee have determined that there are no existing records of any Srila Prabhupada blood tests, and no one knows for sure if or which blood tests might have been done. But unless a specific test for heavy metals is requested by the doctor, patient, or police, which is not a normal procedure, a cadmium poisoning would not be detected. Normal tests for blood count and diabetes would not discover the cadmium. Heavy metals poisoning is actually only detected in about 5 or 10% of all homicides. Any blood tests that Srila Prabhupada had done, if any, were definitely not for determining heavy metals, and therefore the poisoning in London went unnoticed.
Caretakers such as ABHIRAM, who were with Srila Prabhupada in 1977, have said that they would have seen something if there was a poisoning.
Okay, but ABHIRAM was Srila Prabhupada's nurse for under 3 months, and the astronomical cadmium levels went on for at least 8 months, according to the hair tests, starting months before ABHIRAM began his nurse service. He was not there when the poisoning started. Also, he was not on guard by Srila Prabhupada's bed 24 hours a day. Plus, he was not watching all the ways in which a poisoning could have been executed. He did not even suspect at the time, and therefore was not watching specifically for a poisoning. Obviously, just because someone was there some of the time, this does not negate the poisoning, which is now proven by the hair tests, that somehow occurred unseen.
Only loving disciples surrounded Srila Prabhupada, so how could there be a poisoning?
The now proven poisoning was not carried out by a witch coming in on a broomstick. It had to have been done from amongst those who were close to Srila Prabhupada, because it required regular doses. Even though Srila Prabhupada was certainly surrounded by loving disciples, the nature of malicious poisoning is that it is secretive and cunning, unseen to all those present. Obviously, someone's rationale for poisoning Srila Prabhupada overrode whatever affection they had for him. So this objection is emotional and illogical.
If there is new and conclusive evidence that Srila Prabhupada was poisoned, then take it to the police and authorities. Don't bother us.
According to what Bira Krishna Maharaj, the former GBC chairman, what he told me in person, is that yes, this is ISKCON's hypocritical official position, which contradicts their own policies, that prohibit going to civil authorities and demanding instead that issues be adjudicated only internally within ISKCON. But here they say the opposite with the poison issue. They do not want to handle the issue of Prabhupada's poisoning internally, and it should be done externally, namely, go to the police. Well, we do not have any illusions that ISKCON will deal honestly with the proof of Srila Prabhupada's poisoning, as they have already fraudulently covered it up and are not interested in the truth. ISKCON is only concerned about protecting their guru franchises and their financial operations. The truth here is aimed at sincere and honest persons, not the ISKCON misleaders who have steadfastly denied all the evidence. And further, this evidence is being dealt with by legal authorities as we speak. Poisoners, beware.
This poison discussion will only disturb devotees, so why discuss it?
The truth is always worthy and should never be hidden. Yes, the truth of Srila Prabhupada's disappearance pastimes may be painful and disturbing. We should cope with the truth. Otherwise, we should live by avoiding truths. Should we pretend that we will not die, considering this to be a disturbing truth? If presented factually, the truth will have a positive effect. If it is denied, covered up, and ignored, it will be very unhealthy and thus become disturbing in a very negative way. Various pastimes of Srila Prabhupada will evoke diverse emotions, but still it is important for understanding, preserving, and conveying Srila Prabhupada's legacy that the truth about all of his pastimes, including his disappearance, is known.
This poison issue was already settled years ago, so why bring it up again?
ISKCON says that they investigated the poison issue and found no evidence of poisoning. This is preposterous. They covered it up with a phony investigation done by the suspects themselves. The evidence will not just go away because they deny it. The evidence and facts of the matter will be presented directly to the followers of Srila Prabhupada, and we don't care anymore what the ISKCON leadership thinks. They do not care if Srila Prabhupada was poisoned, but we do.
If he was being poisoned, Srila Prabhupada would have put an end to it to protect his movement.
This is speculation. Who can know the mind of the pure devotees? Certainly not us. Was the crucifixion of Christ the end of Christianity? No. But Christ's teachings were adulterated by those who pretended to be his followers. Srila Prabhupada's mission can only be endangered by deviations from his instructions by his followers, and he will live forever for those who do follow them. Faithful followers will struggle to protect Srila Prabhupada's movement from those who poisoned its founder Acharya and then introduced many unauthorized concoctions.
Krishna always protects his pure devotees like Prahlad and Srila Prabhupada. So how could there be a poisoning?
We will impose our rules on Krishna, and he must do as we think he should. Well, why was Haridas Thakur flogged in 22 markets and Christ nailed to the cross? But Prahlad was saved? Is this because Krishna protects only some of his pure devotees? Or is it that there is much that we cannot see or understand about the pastimes of the Lord and his pure devotees? The Lord and his devotees work in mysterious ways. Maybe Srila Prabhupada nullified the poison by his mystic powers and left like Bhishma did at his own time and will. Obviously, Srila Prabhupada is always protected, even if given poison. Also, would a disappearance pastime involving some natural disease or virus be Krishna's protection, but poisoning would not be by his protection?
If Srila Prabhupada was poisoned 40 years ago, what difference does that make now?
Those who poisoned him did so to take over the movement and sit in his seat, using the Acharya's assets for their separate guru franchises. This was the purpose of the poisoning, to remove Srila Prabhupada and then become guru. What difference does it make? Well, one is the corruption, a child abuse institutional culture, unending and unnecessary book changes, loss by alienation of 95% of Srila Prabhupada's direct disciples, demigod worship in the temples, total guru financial unaccountability, and about 50% guru public fall downs, what to speak of what is unknown to the public. Another difference is that the movement has been practically ruined by these poisoners. And now sincere followers of Srila Prabhupada want to purify the mission of the poisoners, their accomplices, supporters, and doctrines. We should believe that poisoners have or can faithfully carry out Srila Prabhupada's desires? Really? Another difference is that we are very upset that Srila Prabhupada was put into such difficulty, that we were unable to protect him, and that he was taken away from us prematurely. What difference does it make? Just be patient and we'll show you.
Srila Prabhupada said, "Not that I am poisoned."
But this phrase was taken out of context. It means something else than what ISKCON proposes it means. It refers to what someone else told Srila Prabhupada. It is not his denial of being poisoned. Otherwise, why would Srila Prabhupada speak about being poisoned before and after he spoke this phrase? Why would Tamal ask after this phrase about who had poisoned him if he was not poisoned? So if we look at the actual conversations from November 77, it is clear these discussions were about actual homicidal poisoning. And that fact was acknowledged by all the caretakers there at that time. But today they sing a different tune. This shows their dishonesty and that there is something they are hiding. Most of the older ISKCON misleaders privately know or deeply suspect Srila Prabhupada was poisoned, but they cannot admit it openly because they are afraid of losing their positions and finances or because of institutional pressures. A number of them have already approached us in confidence.
The discussions about poisoning was just referring to some bad medicine.
Again, if we read the conversations from late 1977, we will see that the talk of poisoning was not about bad medicine, mustard seeds, or of normal toxins that build up in the body from years of eating food. These are cheap diversions from the truth. Srila Prabhupada clearly spoke about homicidal poisoning. Read the conversations and see. Do we have any faith in Srila Prabhupada's words, or will we say as the GBC does, that Srila Prabhupada was simply complaining at the time of death, as is culturally typical of elderly Bengali gentlemen?
This poison theory is blasphemous of senior devotees and defames Srila Prabhupada's glories.
Blasphemy is actually a false accusation. Truth is that senior disciples are naturally suspected of the poisoning because there is ample evidence to that effect. They are implicated by the evidence. But dishonest cover-ups and denial of the factual evidence, that's the real blasphemy on their part. And as Christ was more glorified for his crucifixion, so Srila Prabhupada will be more glorified by his disappearance pastimes, poisoning and all. How he remained always Krishna conscious, forgiving of his poisoners, and detached from his own physical welfare, lucidly preaching to the very end.
The poison theory is just a RITVIK plot.
Well, it could just as well be a Gaudiya Math or Vrindavan Babaji plot, as many of them also accept that Srila Prabhupada was poisoned. The truth is not only for those of a certain persuasion. just as the sun shines equally upon all.
Srila Prabhupada was already old and very ill. So why would someone poison him when he was about to depart anyway?
This one comes from Tamal himself. However, the historical records show that Srila Prabhupada was actually in quite good health until July of 76, and that then his health began to suspiciously decline. And on February 26 of 77, Srila Prabhupada suddenly became very ill, and his health steadily declined for 9 months until his departure. Hair tests established catastrophic cadmium poisoning for at least 8 of those last months. So the poisoning was over a long time, and it was not just a one-time affair in his last days. The poison whispers 3 days before departure indicate a final poisoning. Srila Prabhupada may have stayed with us for many more years, if not for the poisoning which ruined his health in his last year.
Hair analysis is not a reliable science for determining the body burden of various elements.
Actually, the science of hair analysis is widely accepted as a valid and accurate method for determination of poisons and toxins in the human body. It is used by many thousands of scientists, doctors, hospitals, and law enforcement agencies. However, sometimes due to bad practices or sloppy science, and especially when there are small differences between the environmentally or industrially exposed persons and unexposed persons, then hair analysis in those situations may not be very useful. But that situation is inapplicable to Srila Prabhupada, who had up to 306 times more cadmium than the average normal person. So these dramatic astronomical levels are very clearly a big problem. We're not comparing 0.065 with 0.387 parts per million. We are dealing with amounts that stand out like an elephant in a closet. Dr. Morris, who did the hair tests for the Truth Committee, is an expert, experienced, and recognized scientist in the field of hair tests done with neutron activation analysis, and we can trust his findings millions of times more than the ISKCON denials and cover-ups.
Maybe Srila Prabhupada accidentally ingested cadmium from Ayurvedic medicines or other sources.
No Ayurvedic medicine uses cadmium as a component. The only cadmium found in them will be very small amounts due to impurities that may come from the ingredients. In this way, anyone can ingest extra cadmium from medicine, food, air, etc., and may result in cadmium levels maybe a few times more than normal, but not the 250 times more that Srila Prabhupada had. Now, if the cadmium did come from medicines and so on, how come no one else got these astronomical cadmium levels? Srila Prabhupada's levels of cadmium actually are unprecedented in the scientific literature. This bar chart, shown here, compares the level of the average unexposed person at 0.065 parts per million cadmium to the average industrially exposed person at 0.387 parts per million, to Dr. Paige Hudson's expert opinion of 1 part per million as a hefty load, to ARL, a commercial hair analysis outfit in Arizona, whose president testified that the highest reading of cadmium they ever had out of hundreds of thousands of tests was 2 parts per million, to a scientific study showing that the worst industrial waste dump in the United States had 4 parts per million of cadmium, and then to Srila Prabhupada's average of 15.75 parts per million cadmium, which you can see is almost off the chart. Expert opinions are that these levels cannot possibly come from food, medicines, environment, industrial contamination, water, air, cosmetics, and so on. They they come only from a deliberate, malicious poisoning intended to kill. Thus, kill guru, become guru.
The publicizing of Srila Prabhupada's poisoning will be very damaging to the preaching.
The damage will be upon those who were the poisoners and those who harbored, sheltered, and supported them, and became complicit with their deviant doctrines. Anyway, how can ISKCON preaching be pure today if the movement was hijacked by poisoners who obviously had a very mundane agenda?
How do we know whether Srila Prabhupada actually died from cadmium poisoning or from something else?
Well, it really doesn't matter. The hair tests and expert opinions confirm Srila Prabhupada was poisoned with lethal amounts of cadmium over a minimum of 8 months. The point is that cadmium poisoning is unnatural and could not come about other than deliberate poisoning. It also exacerbates diabetes and kidney disease. There was an attempted murder, regardless of what a coroner would say was the final cause of death. What is very clear is that such a massive cadmium poisoning would bring death much sooner than otherwise, maybe by 10 or 15 years.
I don't have time for all of this. I'm too busy preaching and actually serving Srila Prabhupada's mission.
This is an ad hominem attack that implies those who spend time on examining the facts surrounding Srila Prabhupada's disappearance are not real servants of Srila Prabhupada, and they don't engage in substantial service, and they are wasting time. This, of course, ignores the facts that clearly establish that Srila Prabhupada was given poison with malicious intent by those who were close to him. Besides, actually most, if not all, those who are concerned about Srila Prabhupada's being poisoned and his mission being taken over by the poisoners are enthusiastically engaged in sadhana and in sharing Krishna consciousness with others.
We cannot trust the chain of custody of the hair samples. Maybe they were tampered with or are not Srila Prabhupada's hair at all.
The GBC book, Not That I Am Poisoned, details how they arranged for bona fide Srila Prabhupada hair samples via Hari Sori to be sent to Larry Kovar in California, who then sent them on to the University of Wisconsin. We have the FedEx receipt of how these samples were then sent directly to Dr. Morris in Missouri. That covers 2 of the cadmium tests. The third was from a hair found by Dr. Morris in Srila Prabhupada's hair clippers, which had been in the Vrindavan Museum until Hari Sori brought them to Balavanta, the GBC investigator, who then sent them on to Dr. Morris. There is a completely secure chain of custody that is documented and thoroughly dispels any idea of tampering by outside parties. ISKCON will try and convince their followers and supporters that the Truth Committee has no credibility. What else do we expect from ISKCON based on their past history? We expect bribes to scientists and experts in India and other places, threats to those who accept the poisoning, paying off people to stay quiet, create false, forged reports, character assassinations, death threats, and finally even attempts to end lives. That's what we expect from them. There are more objections to the poisoning of Srila Prabhupada, but they all ignore the actual facts and evidence that proves the poisoning beyond any reasonable doubt. The evidence and its honest analysis is contained in Kill Guru, Become Guru, Book 1, The Poisoning of Srila Prabhupada's Body. 800 pages, 100 chapters, due out in June of 2017 as a free ebook. Look for it online and study it, please, to counteract the institutional falsehoods that have confused many innocent persons. The body of evidence shows that Srila Prabhupada was indeed poisoned, and that Tamal is guilty of this beyond a reasonable doubt. Apologies, but this is true.